What does Trump really want, and will Putin repeat the fate of the Assad regime in Syria? This and other topics we will discuss right now. My name is Irina Uzlova, and our guest today is host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report, communication instructor at the University of Wisconsin, and county supervisor in Rock County, Wisconsin, Yuriy Rashkin. Yuriy, hello, glad to see you.
Glad to see you, Irina, and I'd like to welcome our, continuing viewers and listeners who are following us now every week in English. It's a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you for tuning in. Press like and subscribe.
Yes, and I say the same thing. Thank you, our dear viewers, that you are with us every week and for watching us with pleasure. The Associated Press, Bloomberg, Reuters reported that U.S. intelligence has determined that Russia may use its new Oreshnik intermediate-range ballistic missile against Ukraine in the coming days. This has also been mentioned by few Western medias. Why is Putin taking an Oreshnik again? Are these real threats or intimidation?
Well, I think it is pretty clear that we're entering a different stage of this war that is likely to result in potential ceasefire and negotiation process, which was not happening under President Biden, because the policy of Biden administration was to provide Ukraine with all the weapons that it needs as much and as soon as possible. Obviously, there was a lot of questions about whether this was being supplied enough and whether there was enough aid. It's clear that there was not enough aid, but there was a policy of providing aid. We know the tens and tens of billions of dollars that was spent. Policy under new administration is going to be dramatically different. It is going to be this kind of a peacemaking by strength. And that means that versus living in the world of right versus wrong, we are now more in the universe of strong versus weak. And why should there be a war or an argument if one is strong and one is weak? The one who is weak should just agree to whatever the strong wants, and we move on. Except that there's real situation, real people's lives, and therefore I think that Putin's threats can sound very differently actually in Ukraine versus in other countries around the world versus United States, which is so far away. It seems like these things are happening on some other planet in some way. But threats of Putin by Putin to use his the super scary weapon that I heard one specialist describe, and particularly threatening that the title of the name of this thing, Oreshnik, like nut tree, but it has this sound in it, which is supposed to be just terrifying. And these weapons are being designed also marketing-wise for their horrifying names. But at the same time, it seems like there's very few of those. They may not work as designed because this is Russia, but they were able to produce this, one almost like effective video that really had an impact around the world. I think that it was scary to see flashes of lightning, and considering that as I feel like voters in the United States have been through a lot in November and prior to for the last several years, there's just a little bit of an exhaustion. And exhaustion of like, we're tired of everything. We're tired of politics. We're tired of war. We're tired. And now we have Russians who are here with a nuclear weapon, or let's wrap this up. We want to stop, and, to stop this right, I want to get off. And in this setting, you can say that another strike or threat of another strike can have another impact in this kind of a negotiation process of how much exactly is West willing to stand up for Ukraine. And if West is not willing to stand up, then Putin is going to remind, and Oreshnik and strikes are all very important part of this. But it's also crucial to remember that we still have currently President Biden. And that is a big difference from having President Trump, which is what's going to happen on January 20th, 2025. And I keep thinking of the story of Cinderella, where Cinderella went to the ball. She had a wonderful time, danced with the prince, and then clock struck midnight. And we know what happened and how her carriage turned into a pumpkin. And then Prince, because it's a fairy tale, was able to eventually find Cinderella, and there was a happy ending. But I think that just this difference that we're going to experience in our policy and our approach to policy and our approach to other countries, and this starting with the war in Russia, between Russia and Ukraine, the war of Russian aggression, this is going to be the big difference that we're going to see when one of them change from the current administration to the next administration. And the next administration, one big priority that we hear throughout is they want to have a good relations with Putin. In fact, somebody sent me a screenshot, so I have to double check to make sure this is accurate. But Ivanka Trump supposedly posted a picture of a Russian flag and saying something like, "We stand with Russia." I hope this is fake. But the trend, I think, is pretty clear. And therefore, it suits Putin's purposes to say that the situation right now is as dangerous as it's ever been. Really just trying to make it, to plan to somehow make it until January 20th with threats, with new videos, with demonstrations of new strikes by super unbelievable weapons that no one has ever seen before, since, and never been. This never been before kind of a strategy that Putin always has. This never been before, and here we are again. So I view this as a kind of a dramatic approach to negotiations and saber rattling with the understanding of a very specific timeline that this is being acted on.
Yuriy, we will discuss Trump's plan in a few minutes, but now I want to discuss another topic. We saw not fairy tale, not cheap cartoon by Putin's scenario. We see a real failure of Putin's regime in Syria, it seems to me. And the Telegraph reported that Putin's regime may be closer to USSR-like collapse than it seems nowadays. The Assad regime collapsed like a house of cards, undermining Putin's credibility in the Middle East. He could do nothing to save his only state ally in the Arab world, the article says. The limits of Russian military power have been revealed, said Tim Ash, a regional expert at Blue Bay Asset Management and a fellow at Chatham House. So, Yuriy, how do you think? What message, what signals did the collapse of Bashar Assad and Putin's regime in Syria send to Trump and the whole world? How much does it demonstrate the weakness of dictatorships?
I guess it sends many messages, one of which timing is everything. And if you do things in the right time, like, for instance, when Israel destroys Hezbollah and puts Iran in the weakest position possible, and so Iran is not able to help a Syrian dictator, and at the same time, Ukraine is making tremendous, strides and really succeeds to a huge extent in the battlefield, on the battlefield against Russia, draining Russia of the resources needed to go help another dictator. So therefore, maybe Putin and Iran very much want, of course they wanted Assad to succeed in Syria, the dictator there, but it couldn't happen. And I think it's important to understand the difference between power and influence.
Yes.
And Russia has a lot of influence, but it doesn't have total power. And they like to project power. They like to show that they have power. But in reality, it's just influence. And influence wanes, it increases, decreases, depending on the particular situation on the ground at the time. And of course, it reminds everybody how fragile dictatorships are. But that fragility didn't come out of nowhere, and immediately. It took years and years, and it took at least war between Israel and Hezbollah and Hamas and Ukraine and Russia to put Syrian rebels in a position, possibly with aid of Turkey, so that all of that could overcome a dictator in Syria. And we know what is, the pictures of Syria that I've seen, it's been hard war. I don't know that there's an easy victorious war that people like sometimes to speak of. The Syria clearly was not it. So I think that this shows that all regimes, I think, fail. Sooner or later, they upset, they piss off everybody, and there isn't anybody to because people have their own problems. It is a good question though to wonder if Putin really dropped Assad or didn't, because he did accept him as a political refugee, which is a situation very familiar to Ukrainians because their dictator, wannabe, Yanukovych, ran off also when he was thrown out, ran off to Russia, where he lives to this day, or possibly moved on. But that's is rescuing the dictator shows that Russia is really committed to protecting its, clients. I understand that Assad I saw this article saying that he has like $20 million of real estate that he owns in Moscow. So he's going to be okay. But it's not Syria. I mean, he used to have a whole country. So there's a big difference. And I don't know how all those dictators look at each other, but it's a very strength-based relationship, which is very interesting to me, because now that we are likely to have we're going to have a president who values and understands not just loyalty, but also strength, when he sees that Russia is in such weak position.
Yes.
Is this going to be something that he will just lose respect for, or will he use American might to prop up Russia? And that's I think the question that we're going to see answered shortly after January 20th.
So, okay, which choice will Trump do? And we see from another side, next messages from Trump. Trump names Russian-Ukraine war as top priority after inauguration. Resolving the situation with the Russian-Ukraine war will be a top foreign policy priority for U.S. President-elect Donald Trump after he takes office on January 20. Trump plans to act quickly, according to his interview in Paris, and he said that he believed it was necessary to resolve the Ukrainian issue with Russia. According to him, the Middle East is also a bigger priority, but it's a less complicated situation than Ukraine and Russia. Trump added that both situations needed to be resolved quickly due to the significant loss of life. And Trump also said that he had a good meeting with President Zelensky in France on December 7. So Zelensky said he was grateful to Trump for his firm determination to end the war in Ukraine. We see and we understand that the war in Ukraine is a priority for Trump. Okay, but how do you think, Yuriy, that Ukraine's interests for a fair end of the war are also a priority for Trump?
I feel that there's a quote from Putin in the early 90s where he saw somebody, I remember, from a documentary about him, and he was just aspiring mafiosi in St. Petersburg, and I think, well, no, he was I think he was actually, let's see, security. Yes, he was then security to mayor of St. Petersburg. But the point was that he said that it's time to make money. Время делать бабки. And it is such an important understanding of how I think Trump is going to approach this second term, because now that he has successfully escaped jail, so the presidency, that whole approach definitely worked. And then what we're looking at is what are his top priorities, and it's, I think, growing wealth. And we're going to see this in all sorts of ways, and I think that's going to be a priority. As far as Ukraine and what priority it has, it's a question of accountability. If things don't work out completely, in a sense that Putin takes over Ukraine entirely, is this going to be looked at Trump's fault? If it is, then that's not good. It's not acceptable. So there's going to be all sorts of questions of, I think, a little bit of perception, which means how it is done is going to matter. Not just Trump's going to say, I wash my hands and done, but he will make efforts. Right now, he's saying that China can help. Did you know China can help? China that supports Russia and won't talk to, or barely talks to Ukraine, is, according according to Donald Trump, is now going to be the solution, could play a major constructive role. What's going on? I think there's just a general desire to shift Ukraine off the table, and how that, whether that as a topic, the same way that it's a kind of a weird peace, again, through strength, that we're going to see attempt at, where Elon Musk has pretty good relations with China and with Xi Jinping. So why tariffs? Why have problems? Strong men find common ground. And this is all true until one of them breaks faith and attacks the other one. Welcome to World War II. So on that level, it just seems that Donald Trump saying that Middle East is less complex than Ukraine, it really goes against everything we expect in the United States, because in the United States, we know traditionally Middle East is the most complicated thing there can possibly be. And yet it is not as complicated as Ukraine and Russia. I guess maybe that means that if it is somehow resolved, then it is incredibly complex problem that was resolved somehow by Donald Trump. And that's where I see the biggest hope for all of this. I really do feel that the possibility of maybe getting a Nobel Peace Prize, a recognition for ending wars somehow, is something that can potentially motivate somebody like Donald Trump, because I think that would be one possible in its favor. But as far as the fairness to Ukraine, I think that really runs into big problems, because for the deal that is being offered for Ukraine is a deal of a weak versus strong, and weak is supposed to be Ukraine and strong is supposed to be Russia. Never mind that the situation doesn't necessarily look like that right now, but this is an agreement that lives after January 20th of next year. And so in that world, after January 20th of next year, Ukraine would be lucky to, I don't know, remain a state, I guess, according to some people. And so just saying no to Crimea, saying no to NATO, saying no, maybe changing government. It's time for Zelensky to go, for somebody that maybe Putin likes a little better. Never mind that Putin seemed to like Zelensky just fine in 2019, but over time it seems like they've grown apart. Russia wants a lot because it feels they can demand a lot. Because it feels like it's going to have a powerful the person in its, or state in its corner after January 20th. And I think the question is, can this war be stopped before January 20th? Can there be something done right now that will bring this war to a stop? And I think that gives us the best possible chance of remaining in that position after the change of administration. But, you know, whether that is possible or not, this is something also that's being decided by current administration. And current administration has a lot of impact, whether to be more aggressive or go for more escalation or be more conservative. Look at Oreshnik, say, you know, nuclear escalation is a terrible danger, and Russia, you never know, they could, even though they haven't yet. But, you know, they're managing levels of risk. We'll see how things play out. We are in a very dangerous time. We are in a very decisive weeks before we enter, well, probably the next most dangerous time after January 20th. But I think that none of us can, living outside of Ukraine, can truly understand what danger is until we live in Ukraine. So I guess we can just continue to stand for Ukraine, stand with Ukraine, and appreciate what Ukrainians are doing to protect all of us and to lower the level of Russian threat.
Mikhailo Podolyak, advisor to the head of the Office of the President of Ukraine, told that he thinks it would be strange if the Trump administration wanted to play second fiddle and play along with Putin. Why would they want to do that? He asked, and I'm retransmitting this question to you. Why?
Unfortunately, I feel like that there's a Russian expression, "Dva sapaga para," two boots are a pair. And maybe that's part of the reason. But we saw when Donald Trump was president the first time, in 2018, when he met in Helsinki, Finland, with Vladimir Putin, and how he looked up to Putin in that meeting, we saw there was no reason for that. This is a president of the United States of America. Why would he act this way with president of this Russia, which, if you start looking at economy size, it's insignificant, does not warrant. So there must be something else. And I don't think, and I think this consensus seems to be that it's not some kind of a blackmail even type material, because when it comes to Donald Trump is already going to be president of the United States again. He's going to have a lot more power than he did the first time around. He has no reason that we can see why he should be nervous and even thinking about what another, a weaker player may be thinking, the weaker player being Vladimir Putin. So maybe there's something about their joint interests that we just don't quite know yet, that history will show and clarify those kinds of moments, because they clearly seem to have a consensus. They seem to move in the same direction, and it doesn't seem like America and the United States are determining the direction of the relationship right now.
Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban called Russian President Vladimir Putin after visiting Donald Trump. Ukraine considers this just part of Orban's game for his own image, according to a statement from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. Zelensky told, "We all hope that Viktor Orban will not at least be calling Assad in Moscow to listen to his hour-long lecture," said Zelensky. "We hope to." Dmitry Peskov, spokesman for Russian leader Vladimir Putin, said that Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban didn't pass any messages from US President-elect Donald Trump to Vladimir Putin during a telephone conversation. What is behind Orban's so-called peace mission, and how much of Trump is in it?
I think that there's a competition between Viktor Orban and Tucker Carlson about who can do a better job. Yeah, who knows, delivering messages. And Tucker Carlson was just, speaking with Lavrov. Well, it means that Mr. Orban needs to show that he is also a very important player in this, because if you're not strong, well, at least you want to be close to those that are strong and show that you're, well, not quite one of them, but you're very close. And in fact, American conservatives draw inspiration from Viktor Orban. So all of that really makes sense. And if Ukrainian president is concerned that that Ukraine is being discussed behind Ukraine's back, that seems like fate and future of Ukraine is being decided by other countries. Well, that's the opposite of what we're seeing for when Biden's administration is in power, and Secretary Blinken with his constant statements about not a word about Ukraine without Ukraine. We heard that there were some that believed that, there were some that didn't believe that, but now it's a different approach where we totally can talk about anybody behind their back, because that's just what I guess we do in this brave new world until the next election.
I don't even know. And I think that Lavrov and Putin, for Carson and for Orban, which level is higher or lower in this competition? I don't know. Putin may be even lower than Lavrov, because we see on Lavrov's face that he wants his life back. His villas in USA, in Europe, and without sanctions, and his old life. But Putin wants only one aim: to destroy all Ukraine and to occupy Ukraine and other European countries, as we see. And one more topic, please. Yuriy, French President Emmanuel Macron is reportedly considering a potential European peacekeeping mission in Ukraine as a safeguard against renewed Russian aggression. He plans to consult with Poland, which he views as a key ally for such an initiative. Could the USA also join such a discussion about peacekeepers and consider the option of providing peacekeepers from USA with European peacekeepers too in future?
I do not see a possibility where American peacekeepers under President Trump are going to be placed in a position of defending Ukraine or Ukraine's territorial integrity, or whether this any peace deal is followed. I do not, I think it's clear that Donald Trump's policy is based on removing America. Now, again, Secretary Blinken says that when America removes itself, then that vacuum is immediately filled with people with interests that are opposed to American interests. But at this point, it's unclear even what American interests may be, because they seem to line up with Kremlin's priorities so much. But back to France, I feel that politicians have in the United States a very clear habit of speaking truth when they're on the way out. And with President Macron, it seems like he's got a lot of difficulties, a lot of challenges in France politically right now. And it seems like whenever he does, he kind of remembers, takes out a triangle hat and puts it on and reminds everyone of, great glory or something. But politics aside, it seems like we're moving towards a war, and this is just to quote Mitch McConnell, who said that these are Mitch McConnell being leader or current leader, no longer the leader in the next Senate, but of Republican faction, and minority currently, majority going forward. He's an old man who is on his way out as leader of Republican faction in Senate, and he said that this is a very dangerous time, and this is very similar to what we saw before World War II. Even the name is the same, America First. So I think that that experience should have taught us something. But until then, it's not too bad to hear politicians say the right thing, whatever the reason may be for them personally. And the question is what actions are going to be coming out of this. As the President Biden likes to say, don't tell me don't tell me what you like, your priorities, show me your budget. So I think pronouncements can only carry us so far, but we got to have pronouncements too.
And one more minute, please. I cannot say quick goodbye to you today, Yuriy. I see new information from Reuters, and it seems that it's like a laughing moment for us. President-elect Donald Trump is planning a blizzard of more than 25 executive orders and directives on his first day in office on January 20, as he seeks to dramatically reshape USA government policy on issues from immigration to energy. Two sources familiar with the effort said Trump has told his team he wants to make a big splash with the day one orders, looking to exert his executive power with greater scale and speed than he did during his first term. For what and for whom this big splash of orders? 25.
I think this harkens back to our nominee for Homeland Security, Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, governor of, I think, South Dakota, who in her autobiography wrote about shooting a dog. And when people were saying, why would you even say that? She was showing this as the strength of will, the dedication. Sometimes you have to make difficult choices. And she illustrated it by saying how she shot a dog, and I understand after that she killed a goat. And that's the level. On the other hand, Donald Trump is clearly working at a presidential level of demonstrating his brutality, and he's doing it this way. So I think this is an important part of the intimidation that is also expected, the campaign that's going to come in all directions. We see this from nominees right now for FBI, for CIA, for national intelligence. We see those effects of this. So I think that Donald Trump is just demonstrating that he's not going to be held back by considerations of morals and empathy and compassion. This is a different time in America, and appealing to, for instance, speaking about the suffering of Ukrainians is not going to carry as much weight as victories, and that Ukrainian forces are able to do, ZSU, and the strength of Ukrainian spirit and its ability to defeat Russian aggression, I think is really important part of the story going forward versus only or primarily speaking about the suffering of Ukrainian people. Nothing changed. There's still suffering by Ukrainian people and heroism by Ukrainian troops, but it's just the conversation is clearly shifting.
Yuriy, thank you very much for this conversation, for your position, for your time, and for all your interesting thoughts. Thank you. See you next week. Goodbye.
Thank you, Irina.
And take care of yourself, please. Bye.
Will do as well.
Yuriy Rashkin, host of YouTube channel Rashkin Report, was with us, with me, Irina Uzlova. Thank you, our dear viewers, for your joining. See you next week. Goodbye.